So Mark, we're coming to another section now, which is about people's contact with council and also communication with and from council. And we saw in the last section that that was very important.
The previous questions have been more holistic, and what we want to do now is get down to the more transactional level to see how residents feel about individual transactions with council.
Let's hear it from you, Mark.
Thank you. So this next section deals with residents contacting council and how their experience was. It's a big section, it's got lots of questions. I've cut it down to basically one or two main questions. And that question is, how satisfied are you with the way your contact was handled? So of those that had dealt with council in the last 12 months, we simply asked them, how satisfied were you? 5-point scale from not at all satisfied up to very satisfied. And again, we're showing you the blue bar is your 2020 result and the grey bar is our normative data. And once again, we can create a mean score. Up the top left, the mean score for 2020 is 3.79 and in 2018 it was 3.71. Very similar results. And I must stress that the 2018 result was based on a different scale, and we've used an algorithm to sort of make it a 5-point scale. But it appears as if, you know, the results are fairly similar. What I'm interested in is how does this satisfaction with contact result compare to our normative data? And your score of 3.79 is actually below our norm of 3.9. It's the first result, I think, in the whole presentation where we've actually got a metric that is below our benchmark. So what's going on here? I guess there's a few things. First of all, back in 2018, when the research was done, 26% of the community had contacted council in the 12 months prior to the research, so 26%. In 2020, when we did the research for you last November, it was 46%. So that's what the residents are telling us both in the 2018 survey, it was 26%, in the 2020 survey, it was 46%. That's an enormous increase. So we came to council with that information and said, it looks like perhaps you're below norm, perhaps you're below norm because you've been overwhelmed by contact. So council then provided us with some contact data, and I've tried to summarise it at the bottom of the slide here. So what I want you to do is think about the 12 months from March 2019 to February 2020, so pre-COVID. There were 2 months in that period that were where you suffered storms. They were November 2019 and February 2020. And email volumes, so emails coming into council in those months were 40 to 50% higher than the 12-month average. So they just ballooned in those 2 months when you had storms. So there was obviously a concentration of inquiries. Phone volumes were also up, not as much, by 12%. So that potentially suggests that the storms in November 2019 and February 2020 have impacted the call volumes and the email volumes that councils had to deal with. But let's also talk about COVID. If we think about, again, that 12 months, March 2019 to February 2020, so pre-COVID, email volumes were up. So then compared to March 2020 to December 2020. So the 9 months of last year, the last 9 months of last year, email volumes were up 70% March 2020 to December 2020 compared to pre-COVID. Phone volumes didn't change. So you could see that there's almost been this shift that the COVID period, there has been more email coming in. Phone hasn't changed, you're still taking the same. So it seems to me like storms and COVID have meant an increase in contact with council, but it may actually not just be storms and COVID. It may be the fact that phone has stayed relatively steady, but email volumes have increased. It could just be partly a shift in the way you're working with the community as well. So for what it's worth, I would explore that further with the community. Now, we also ask a question in this section about how satisfied are you with the level of communication council has with the community. This is the question that I added into the regression analysis, the second version that became a main driver on its own. And what we're doing here is showing you the results of of 2020 in deep blue, and then our benchmark in grey. But we can also compare you with your 2018 result, so that top left-hand cell. And your score of 3.62 in 2020 is well above your 2018 result. Your 2018 result was again from a slightly different question. We've massaged the data to convert it from a different scale into a 5-point scale. But again, it does seem to be up on 2018. But when you compare it to benchmark, your score of 3.62 out of 5 is well above our norm of 3.46. So another metric where if you just talk at a more macro level about satisfaction with council's communication, not individual contact, but just general communication, it's well above our norm and is in keeping and in line with some of the other metrics we've been looking at. We also said to the community, so if you have to, through which of the following methods would you like to receive information from council? So how do you want us to talk to you? Interestingly, web, internet, 81% was the dominant answer. Email, 72%, followed by council's newsletter at 67%. It's actually really interesting that right up the top you've got digital communication. Because I have worked with some other councils where it's almost letter in the mail is number one. But yours has been web, internet and email is right up the top, followed by the newsletter and then brochures, flyers and so on. There is no silver bullet. We've asked this question for many councils and there is no silver bullet. There's no one communication method. You've got to keep looking at a mix of communication strategies to get to the community. Just building on that slide, what we've done here is, it's still the same question, how would you like to be communicated to, but we've cross-analysed it by those who did contact council in the past 12 months versus those that didn't. And the reason we've done that is because, for instance, if you look at email, it's now 81% for those that have contacted council in the past and 64% for those that haven't. Council's newsletter, the Willoughby Update, it's 73% for those that have contacted council, which is significantly higher than the 62% for those that haven't. So you can see that there are differences, and those that have contacted council do have slightly different preferences, so keep that in mind.